The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yeah, good morning, you guys. It is Wednesday, March 4th, 2026. And today is, you're going to love this, Dale. It's National Sons Day.
Sons? You mean like male children?
Yeah, like you know, like remember
I got three of them.
Remember that song?
I got some gray hair here, you know.
Remember that song, My Three Sons, or that show?
I do, but that's not how my sons were.
That's from your era, Dale.
Oh, it was, but my sons were from a different era. There were large hemorrhoids at times in my life, but I love them and they're good men, but damn, boys are hard.
Yeah, shout out to all the sons out there, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And even the ones that say, come on, son.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. It's also Marching Music Day. I guess if you're in band class, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Congratulations.
I don't do that so much anymore, you know?
Today's
used to be a lot of bands in front of all sorts of parades, and
you know,
I don't see as much anymore.
I like the, you know what I'm saying? I like the, you know, bands will make them dance. You know what I mean? I'm a big fan of that.
Well, you pass out the appropriate lubricant to the crowd and put on some music, people will start dancing.
Easy there. No Diddy parties over here, Dale.
No, I'm talking about a social lubricant, little liquid stupid, maybe put a bottle a couple of times, something, you know, you'll be dancing like Bob Marley.
Just want to make sure we're all on the same page with all this, Dale.
Yeah. No oil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
It's not baby oil.
Exactly. It's also National Grammar Day for all of you that like to, you know what I'm saying, make sure that your punctuation is correct and your words are spaced properly.
I'm not that tight-assed. You know, I just am not.
I have really bad OCD, Dale. I have really bad OCD, and it bugs me. Even when people send me text message and abbreviation and shit, I'm like, what the fuck? Do you not know? My bad. Yeah. Do you not know English?
Yeah. Well, I had an English teacher in junior high school that she and I just locked horns because she had an ass so tight she couldn't even fart.
Oh,
and
man.
You got one letter out, man. She was up. She'd send me to the office. I was a student body president. The principal would go, "Why are you here, Dale?" Miss Aldridge. Okay, have a seat. Because he knew what she was like, and I was that kind of kid. It's like I asked questions that made her look stupid, and she didn't like it. And
man, bro, I had one of the hottest English teachers in junior high. Oh man, she was smoking hot. I think her name was Mrs. Tanner, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
but
Miss Aldridge was not smoking hot.
Oh, this one was, and she did this thing when she would talk, you know, she'd put her hands together and da 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 da, and then she'd do like this and then like this and like
yeah.
Oh man, you know, the 90s.
The good old days.
Yeah, the 90s. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, mine were the 60s. Come on, dude. What are you talking about?
Hey, bro. You know, a 6 and a 9. You know, it's just upside down. One's right side up, but which one is which? It's also National Pound Cake Day. I can do without the carbs.
Yeah, but you know, on those occasions, I like myself some pound cake with ice cream and chocolate sauce and caramel. The stuff that clogs my arteries that people are telling me don't eat it. Fuck, I'm going to eat it anyway because you tell me not to.
I prefer pounds of weed, Dale.
Well, that has
that's the only
it does
cake.
good things too.
That brings the real cake to the yard. You know what I'm saying? And of course, today is also National GI Day. And shout out to all of our GIs out there working hard, getting things done for our country. We really, truly appreciate your service, because without you, we wouldn't be able to do things that we do here.
There's a lot of us out there that put on that uniform, and we have to really pay attention to taking care of them when they get home.
Exactly.
We're in the middle of this right now. Four already died, and that's where my heart goes, because I was a corpsman. And we tried to put people back together after we call kinetic injuries, where a bomb or a bullet or napalm or whatever hit them. And and my daughter-in-law's from she's from Iran. Her parents are still there. She escaped, and she's a citizen of the United States now. But we're watching that. It's hard not to really have heartfelt sympathy for the people in Iran who don't like these knuckleheads anyway.
They are out celebrating right now out in the streets out there. So
I would hope so.
They are.
But there's still people out there that will shoot you.
They
daring to do that.
That is for sure. And much love to all the people that are. A lot of people want to call it a war. I call it a rescue mission, Dale.
Well, it doesn't matter what you call it. When it comes down to the dirt level, someone's shooting at you, you got to shoot back, and that's what the basis for PTSD, for other injuries. So it doesn't matter what you call it. When you're dodging bullets or drones coming in, that takes a certain amount of intestinal fortitude. And just a shout out to them: keep your head down, your powder dry, eyes open, ears up, and careful. And when they come back, let's pat them on the back and tell them thank you.
And thank you. Yes, and good job. And on that, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website, www.high9news.com. So thank you to all of you joining us from any one of those platforms. And it appears that Cincinnati officials are proposing a $5 million reparations housing program funded in part by marijuana tax revenue. That's right. Cincinnati city officials are considering a proposal that would use marijuana tax revenue to help fund a new housing-focused reparations program. The Cincinnati City Council is expected to take up discussion of the Cincinnati Real Property Reparations Program, CRPRP. Interesting. In early March. The proposal is co-sponsored by Vice Mayor Jan Michelle Lemon Kearney, it's a lot of names, and Councilman Scotty Johnson, and would provide housing-related financial assistance to certain residents. Under the plan, the city would make an initial $5 million investment using a combination of marijuana tax revenue and capital budget funds. The program would focus on 15 of Cincinnati's 52 neighborhoods and would offer assistance to low to moderate income residents, as well as individuals or family members of individuals who were previously prevented from purchasing homes due to discriminatory practices. Funds could be used for down payments, delinquent property taxes, or emergency home repairs, and reparations programs tied to marijuana tax revenue have emerged in other parts of the country. Evanston, Illinois became the first city to issue $25,000 payments to some black residents through a program funded by marijuana tax revenue. Interesting use of funds. I wonder if this is actually going to get challenged. I'm not sure if this is actually even legal for them to do in this manner, but Dale, I can't wait to hear what you have to say. I'm so glad that you are a lawyer.
Well, at 30,000 feet, it seems to violate equal protection.
That was my thought exactly.
And that is, it sticks in the craw of, I don't want to use pejoratives here, but there's been the progressive movement has launched onto, there's people out there who have been mistreated, and we need to take steps to fix all that stuff without necessarily a plan. We're just going to throw money at it and see if it gets better. And historically, it doesn't tend to solve the problems. And when you carve out special treatment for one group, that's that's where you start getting yourself into trouble, because the Constitution requires that everybody be treated equally. Okay? And that just, I don't have a good answer for people who think that we should look at things from the past and try to fix them today for things that were done in the past that we don't like. Our system of law is fault-based. Okay? And if there were CC&Rs, restrictions on deeds that you couldn't buy or sell there, okay, now you've got somebody who did something, and perhaps people who were harmed directly by that. But if those people are all dead, now, there's thorny questions of, are your children in a line to have standing, if you will, to go after money because of that? And how do we do that? And it's real thorny. And my progressive friends get all sort of butthurt whenever I ask questions like this. But, I'm going to channel George Carlin here for a minute. From a 30,000-foot view, humans we're sexually dimorphic, we're males and females, and males handle their business in certain ways, and women handle theirs in different ways.
That's
and
true.
No one's right or wrong. They're just, and what I view as a lot of the focus on people's past hurts and their feelings, and let's make everything equal and just, in my view, is a more of a feminine way of handling problems than we're watching Iran is a totally masculine way of handling problems. Okay, and that I'm not trying to be reductionist here, and these are not absolutes, but looking out for people's feelings. And the ultra woke were like, the classic example of this. Everybody's feelings. Oh, don't say something hurts my feelings. Really?
That's the dumbest thing ever.
Saying, huh? Well, and I have these discussions in my own family, because I got from woke to MAGA in my family, and we have these discussions.
Shout out to all your MAGA relatives.
Well, we try to keep politics out as much as we can, but it's almost impossible today.
I want to come over for Thanksgiving, Dale.
Oh, it's a food fight, dude.
Yeah, I'm going to wear some triggering clothing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, my brother-in-law, you don't need to wear anything. You don't have to push his button much, and he's going off. And it's cool, because I've known him, 60 years, a long time. I know he's a good guy. We just have disagreements on policy, and that's fine. But, I have on the woke side, it's like, oh my God. Yeah. Are you listening to me? Who's going to pay for this? Is the biggest question I always have. Who's going to pay for this shit? Yeah. And now the payment here is it's coming out of our cannabis tax.
Yep.
And from what I wrote a couple of weeks back about, I have problems with wasting our cannabis taxes here in California. If Steve Hilton's right, and he found the fraud that's out there and the mismanagement of these funds, that makes me irritated, because the grift and the fraud from government funds is just, Forrest Gump can figure out how to get money out of the system. Yep. And that's a problem. So I have concerns about how this is actually going to be spent, but I have no problem trying to help people who have been fundamentally discriminated against in the past. My son bought a house up here. I looked at his deed, and you can't sell to blacks or Jews. Now they don't enforce that anymore, but there was a period of time where, if you're in a category, you were treated differently. Yeah. Okay? But I mean, my son-in-law, we're going through his family, and he's black, and we're back at they just got rid of slavery, and the family's free. And you can find just tragedies all through the history of, slavery ends and we come to the modern era. But, how about Mexican Americans? Yeah. We have the Chinese Exclusion Act. We sent Japanese to internment camps in Second World War. Yep. Yeah, we have done things in the past, and we've got Indians on reservations. All these things are, you look at them and go, we probably shouldn't have done that. But now how do we go forward, and how do we have a plan that makes sense within budgets, within the law, to try and help people? And if you carve out a category, I'm telling you, now you got a problem with the Constitution. Yeah. People don't like to hear that, but they don't. I'm sorry, I read the document. And it says we get equal protection before the law.
That's right.
I don't know how they get around that if you're worried about everybody's past problems and their feelings and all that stuff today. I really can't fix that. I don't know how you fix that.
Let me tell you something, Dale. I'm offended. I'm offended. And no one's worried about my opinion. No one's worried about my feelings.
You know how I don't give two shits about how you feel, Jason.
See what I'm saying? Exactly. That's my point. That's exactly my point.
But we also have this thing called freedom of speech, okay? And there's people on both sides who are sensitive to saying things that, it hurts my feelings, I don't like it. Well, too bad. Really too bad.
Yeah, exactly.
If your butt puckers up because somebody says something, that's your problem. Because we have freedom of speech in this country, whether you like it or not. And it's one of the most important rights we have in our Constitution, is I can say whatever I want, and if it's true, you can't sue me for defamation.
Yep.
You're a public figure. I can tell you, you're ugly and your mom dresses you funny. What can you do? You may not like it, but you're not going to win in court. Over things like that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of those going on over on the internet on some other channels that I have been really enjoying, of these different allegations, and these people can't sue because it's actually true. And these people are going crazy, the fact that this person is saying all of these things on the internet. And if I guess if you know, you know. And on that, we're going to roll into our first commercial, and we are going to be right back. And we are back, you guys. Yes. And oh man, it was a big night out in Texas last night, Dale. There was a lot of happy people, a lot of sad faces, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of people all in their feely feels. Jasmine Crockett got annihilated last night. Dan Crenshaw got annihilated last night. It was fantastic. But you know what else happened in Texas? Because the Texas voters, and I'm just going to say this straight up, this title is misleading. Okay, I wish you guys would have specified that Texas Democrat voters, because this was not on the ballot for all the voters. This was only if you voted in the Democratic primary, you guys. So just so you know what I'm saying? Because Texas Democrat voters approve a marijuana legalization ballot measure. Texas voters have approved a marijuana legalization question that appeared on the state's Democratic primary ballot. Oh, there it is. As part of the primary election on Tuesday, each major party was able to place several non-binding propositions on the ballot that allow voters show how they feel on key issues. So it's basically a poll, just so you guys know. The Texas Democratic Party used one of its propositions to find out where the electorate stands on legalizing cannabis and whether past convictions should be expunged. Preliminary results indicate that Texas voters who selected a Democratic primary ballot approved the cannabis question by a margin of 80% to 20%, with 85% of polling locations reporting as of Wednesday morning. Quote, Texas should legalize cannabis for adults and automatically expunge criminal records for past low-level cannabis offenses. There was no cannabis question on the Republican ballot, but Texas has an open primary system in which voters can opt to participate in either party's primary, regardless of how they are registered. That's interesting. The approval of a Democrats' marijuana question will not on its own change any cannabis laws, but it could send a signal to lawmakers that the reform is popular with voters. For what it's worth, a statewide poll released last month found that Texas voters don't like how the state leaders and lawmakers have handled marijuana and THC policy issues, and in the survey, a plurality plurality of voters, 40%, said they disapprove of how their elected officials have approached the issue, according to the survey. Just 29% said they approve of how cannabis issues have been handled, while 31% said they didn't have an opinion one way or the other. A separate poll released last year found that a plurality of Texas voters want the state's marijuana laws to be made, in quotes, less strict. And among the legislative items lawmakers considered during recent special sessions, and voters say a proposal to address hemp regulations was among the least important. But in the background, officials with the Department of Public Safety, better known as DPS, in December conditionally approved 9 new medical marijuana business licenses in December as part of the law that's being implemented to significantly expand the state's cannabis program. Mind you, those are all MSO people that received those licenses. The department will issue conditional licenses to 3 additional dispensaries by April of 2026, and this represents a major change to the program, as there are currently only 3 dispensary licensed to operate in the state of Texas. DPS in October adopted additional rules to increase the number of licensed dispensaries, establishing security requirements for satellite locations, and authorizing the revocation of licenses for certain violations. The Department of State Health Services, better known as DSHS, what they call it out there in Texas, also recently finalized rules allowing doctors to recommend new qualifying conditions for cannabis patients and creating standards for allowable low THC inhalation devices. But meanwhile, bipartisan Texas lawmakers say the stage is set to advance legalization next session, establishing regulations for hemp THC products, with growing understanding among their colleagues that prohibition fails to effectively address concerns about the cannabis market. In the interim, Texas regulators have taken a series of steps to enact rules around consumable hemp products over recent months, which began after Governor Greg Abbott vetoed a bill last year that would have effectively eradicated the state's hemp market. In late December, meanwhile, the Department of State Health Services released a set of proposed rules to regulate the state's hemp market, including provisions related to age-gating licensing fees, testing requirements, packaging restrictions, and more, in response to an executive order the governor signed in September. You guys, wow. Look at this. They're trying to say that the voters voted for this, but really it's just a litmus test and a poll and nothing more than that. What do you have to say about this, Dale?
Well, there is lurking out there in the middle of the Democrats and the Republicans right now a plurality of voters who look at both sides and go, I'm not buying this 100%. I'm still open to be drawn one way or the other. And I think that's a problem looming. And coming out of Texas, there was a big show up by Democrats, at least is what I can say so far. What that's going to mean, because it's been a red state at its government level for a long time, 30 years or something like that now, Jason. It's been a long time. And this may shake some things up, but if you are an advocate for cannabis, you're on the fence, and you get a poll, this is basically a poll like this, that's like, maybe you should pay attention to this. And I think Greg Abbott may pay attention to it too. Yep. If he actually survives this election, and I don't know how it's going to turn out.
But Abbott smoked him last night. He smoked like 88% went to him last night. He did tremendous last night.
Okay, but there's a general election coming up. And I don't know how that's going to work out, because there's a lot of people pissed off at both parties. That's fine, but I would say that Governor Abbott is in a safe seat in the general election. Like the question is, how much margin will he actually win by, I think. But I think there's no way that he doesn't win. Just my personal opinion. Well, but what's going on there in Texas, we may see that happen here in California, which is, long-standing blue state. But a lot of people are shaking their head going, you know what? I'm just not sure that I want to pass the baton to people who don't recognize the problems we have here. Because even in Texas, at the governmental level, there's fraud going on everywhere. Don't try to pretend like it's not. The Democrats may have the patent on how to steal from the government more than the Republicans do, but it's there. And I think people are, getting irritated because we pump a lot of tax money in. And you wonder, where's the accountability for our tax money? Where in the hell is it? I hit a pothole. Who's fixing my roads? I mean, those are just some of the problems that Mary and Joe Dokes are having out there, and they have to count their pennies, and the government just seems to shake the tree for more tax money and and waste it. It's a lot of people are pissed off about that, and that's irrespective of party. So, you know, we'll see. I think things are going to fundamentally have to change here, and I hope it can happen peacefully, but you know, we'll see.
Texas
people really pissed off out there.
Texas 55 Rex in the chat says, how many Republicans crossed over and voted in the Democratic primary? And I'm going to say that I'm willing to bet that not a lot of them do. I don't think there's a high number that do that. And if they did, I don't think they necessarily did it just so that they could vote on this cannabis issue. I would think that they would want to vote for whoever that they thought would be the worst Democrat to actually run in a general. To hedge that. I mean, if I was thinking strategically, that's, you know what I mean, that's what I would say. But I think that that there's enough bad Republicans that if you're a Republican, you're going to want to vote in their primary to make sure that the bad Republicans don't win their primary. And, you know, I'm glad Dan Crenshaw lost last night.
Well, but we've still got that looming problem of, I think the stats are up to like 45% of potential voters are undecided.
I don't buy that.
Well, okay. You can buy whatever you want. We'll see if they really are out there, because if you can go into the voting booth and vote for whoever you want, we really don't know who's crossing over unless you go outside and raise your hands. I crossed over. I don't think that's going to happen. That's why they have
these Secretary of States have that information, because, you know, if you're a registered Democrat or registered Republican, that's on your voting roll. So they can see that, and if you go and vote in the Republican primary as a Democrat or vote in the Democratic primary as a Republican, they can see that. So,
well, that's the primary.
Yeah,
the general election, no.
Well, yeah, but the general election is very different. You mainly have the two front running candidates in the general election, and so it's a lot more cut and dry in a general.
Well, that may be what you say historically speaking, but I think voters are pissed off at both parties right now. Large numbers of them are, and if you're not paying attention to that, and you're going to be where the Democrats are on the outside looking through the window, trying to scream and yell and get attention, and don't do what you're doing. And
to your point, Dale, I do agree with you on that. And I think that's why we're seeing this kind of like resurgence of all these new freshman Republicans that are coming in, that are coming into the party, that are taking out what you would call the old guard, Dale.
Well, and this happens. I mean, it happened when in the 1960s, we had a lot of problems. I mean, the Dixiecrats ran to the Republican Party.
Yep.
So there was a lot of things that happened to these traditional parties. And, you know, it may have to happen again, whether we like it or not, or whether some event gets it going. I mean, the polls of both parties are not really all that palatable to Mary and Joe Dokes, who pay the bills of this country. So where that's going to go, I'm not sure. I'm not Nostradamus, and even if I was, the Cassandra effect would come in and no one would believe me. So here we go. What's going to happen? I don't know.
Interesting, Dale. Very, 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 very interesting. Well, shout out to Texas. And on that, we're going to roll right in to Mr. Dale Schafer. Dale has been an attorney since the Reagan administration. He has represented physicians, hospitals, insurance companies, cops, corrections officers, and for the last 25 years, he specialized in cannabis law. He served a 5-year federal prison sentence for helping medical marijuana patients and managed to save his law license. He's blunt. He doesn't smoke them because they're ratchet, they're nasty, and they turn your teeth yellow and other things yellow, but he is honest and he's unconcerned with public opinions, your opinion, and anyone wants to identify as anything else's opinion. And he will show you how he can defy gravity by pissing up a rope. That's right, it's your favorite Tio Loco, and you can find him at his own law office at the law office of none other than Dale Schafer.
Good morning, everybody. And for the East Coast, early afternoon, it's Tio Loco, Jason's favorite, Philip Shiticus.
That's right.
Okay. And yesterday, I listened to, or actually Monday, I listened to the entire argument in the what they call Himani case. And this is, can you have a gun if you smoke pot? And yesterday, or Kyle Yeager, Monday, Kyle Yeager put this out from Marijuana Moment. And the headline is Supreme Court Justices suggest Trump's marijuana rescheduling move undermines gun ban for users that his DOJ is defending. And that's way too much verbiage, but we'll go from there. Okay. I don't know. I'm not trying to, crap on the guy, but that some of the stuff, you get your headlines, and it's like the cat chasing the laser light. I've been following this for a minute, and I'm going to try to, give you an understanding. If you listen to these things, they use buzzwords and concepts that for the average person, you just go, yeah, I'm not going to listen to this shit. It does have meaning. So let's see if we can figure this out. The Second Amendment's clear. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, which means you can't pass a law that takes away my guns. That's the basic meaning of it. Okay. So this gun law takes away your gun rights. If you are an illegal user of controlled substances, is the term they use, it takes away your gun rights. Okay. So now we have a law that in fact violates the Second Amendment. So in order for that to happen, the courts use what we call strict scrutiny. If we're going to let you infringe on somebody's constitutional rights, you've got to establish that there is a very critical state interest here. Okay. And that whatever the law is, it's narrowly tailored to meet that interest and doesn't go any farther than it has to infringe on people's rights. That's sort of the context of what they're arguing about in this Himani case. Now, the problem statute we have was passed in 1968. And I think we talked about this before, Jason.
Yep.
It was a federal gun control law. And there's an entire list of categories of people we do not want to have guns. And honestly, I remember when this came out and the news had, these Black Panthers with assault rifles over their shoulder showing up at events. Okay. We also had what my old man called these hippies and these, these communists, going against the law, and they smoked a lot of weed. Okay. So back in 1968, there was a law that made marijuana use illegal, and you could own a gun, but if you're a felon, there are a lot of categories that they wanted to try to restrict your gun rights, and these are categorical restrictions. Okay. Now, the use of the term illegal use of a controlled substance had a meaning in 1968 that got changed in 1969 when the federal government, in response to the Timothy Leary case where the Marijuana Tax Act was thrown out, grabbed a bunch of these controlled substances laws that are out there and consolidated them into one, the schedules, and it gave the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, the authority to move these controlled substances up and down these schedules. Okay. So that happens under the Administrative Procedures Act. But if somebody gets arrested, you don't go before an administrative law judge. You go to a real court. Okay. And when you get to the real court and you throw up, hey, this violates the Second Amendment, please explain to me how you're doing this, and you challenge the law, that's what we have here. Now, the argument boiled down to a categorical exclusion for addiction. Okay. And this is where the new rules after Bruin, and to remind you, in 22, the Supreme Court passed the Bruin test. It said, wipe the board of all this bullshit we've been seeing about how you rationalize taking gun rights away. We're going to go back to 1791 when they ratified the Second Amendment. What could you take away someone's gun rights for in those days? And what they allowed was you're a habitual drunkard. Okay. And you would have to go in front of a magistrate, and someone would have to prove that, you're so drunk all the time that even when you're not intoxicated, you're dangerous. You can't take care of yourself, can't support your family, blah, blah, blah. You're dangerous enough that we're going to take your guns away. That was allowed. So that's where the argument was falling in this Supreme Court presentation. And I want to make sure I mention that Sarah Harris,
Yeah.
who's was defending the federal government,
Yep.
and Aaron Murphy was defending, the Mr. Hamani.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had the privilege over my career to meet very capable, competent females in professions, medicine and now in the law. These two were good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to tell you right now, they were good. But in my opinion, the government handed Sarah Harris a shit sandwich.
Yeah, they did.
And she had a whole lot of trouble getting out from under.
Yeah, she did.
Well, but if we're going to say, okay, there's a critical state interest here in protecting public safety from dangerous people that might have a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the court was, okay, we accept that part of this strict scrutiny test. But let's move on to, is this narrowly tailored to meet that problem of disarming dangerous people? And so Aaron Murphy was saying, yeah, well, we agree that if they can show you're an addict, okay, that's comparable to being habitual drunk in the day when they took your guns away. They weren't arguing about that. What they argued about was you're an illegal user of controlled substances. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when the gun control law was passed in '68, there was no Bruin decision. Okay. When the Controlled Substances Act was passed, there was no Bruin decision. The CSA, it gives categories of how you put them in schedules based upon their potential for habituation, their use in medicine, and these were more personal problems for people who use them. Does this make you dangerous to society?
Mm-hmm.
So Sarah Harris was trying to figure out a way to connect, the old drunkard, we're going to disarm you as a habitual drunkard,
Mm-hmm.
to somebody who takes a gummy at nighttime to get to sleep.
Oh, it's just so good.
And, it was obvious. I'm watching this. She's got this shit sandwich and she's trying to figure out how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And these justices, when you go to law school, they teach you to think like Socrates. Define your terms. Are there boundaries? And do you have assumptions? And when you start asking questions about that, define your terms. Does being an illegal user of a substance make you ergo dangerous? And she was trying to connect the dots. And Kagan, I think, said, well, what if you take ayahuasca?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you can't find your ass with two hands for 6 or 7 hours. Okay. Does that automatically mean that we're going to take your guns away?
Mm-hmm.
And please look back to the historical, habitual drunkard. Okay. And then I think it was Gorsuch who brought up that, I looked at the definition of addiction in the Controlled Substances Act. It says something about, you habitually use drugs that, have a negative impact on public morals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, there's a vague and ambiguous term that we're going to leave that alone since you're not really fighting about the addiction part of this.
Mm-hmm.
For this case, she said, I think we're going to agree that a categorical exclusion of addicts fits the Bruin test.
Mm-hmm.
That's like an habitual drunk. Okay, we get that. But on the other side of this, and I think it was Gorsuch who threw in and said, look, the president says that we want to reschedule this. Okay, so you're telling me this is like an habitual drunk case when the president's saying, look, we don't buy it, that's dangerous. We want it to be a Schedule III drug, or at least work on that.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah, I wasn't watching, can't watch it, but I'm telling you, I've been there where you're tap dancing. They're asking you questions and internally that that's your weakness because you have the meetings. And all of a sudden the judge is trying to pin you down. Like, listen, you ain't going to be slippery in front of me, goddammit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to nail your ass down here. And she did a bad job of answering their questions. But then there was the other question.
I think she did a great job.
Okay, go ahead. What's your question?
I was going to say, I think she did a great job of answering their questions, Dale, because her answers were horrible.
Well, but if I hire you to represent me and I'm watching you give horrible answers, it's like, that's not helping me a lot. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the question now is going to boil down to, are we going to allow this as applied challenge or a facial challenge? In other words, is the court going to look at this term of an illegal user of controlled substances is so vague, it cannot be enforced. It's unconstitutionally vague on its face. And so we're going to throw the whole category out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the other one, is it unconstitutional as it's applied to Mr. Hamani, who admittedly, I don't know if he smokes or whatever, he used cannabis a couple times a week, and in between, he didn't. And, you know, the number of states that have agreed that this is not the dangerous substance that fentanyl or heroin might be, in the face of all that, is applying it to someone who smokes weed. Can that work? Is it constitutional? Is that narrowly enough written to apply to the dangerousness that we are going to allow you to take gun rights away? And Aaron Murphy was winning that argument all day long. And I'm going to say Kavanaugh asked questions about, you know, this is going to put, you know, we have to go in and have an individual litigation of your dangerousness. And I think historically the answer is, if I'm going to put you in a mental home, especially if you're an addict, you have a hearing on that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so it all goes before a judge at some point. All right. And so, yeah, it's going to, and it happens right now.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in these criminal cases, if you're going to put me in jail for smoking weed and having a gun, I'm going to challenge that as it's unconstitutional. You're going to have hearings like we're having here.
Yep.
You can't change the law just because it makes somebody uncomfortable. You have to go prove it in court.
Mm-hmm.
And Alito, same way. I think if I'm going to project here, Kavanaugh and Alito are going to vote to uphold this, and the rest of them, I think they're leaning the other way, that either it's going to be found on its face categorically unconstitutional, or is applied to Mr. Hamani. This is unconstitutional because the Second Amendment says you can't take away people's right to possess and carry guns.
Mm-hmm.
It says that. So the government has this burden of strict scrutiny, and I just don't see they're going to be able to meet that burden in this case. So
yeah, I'm with you, Dale. I don't think they're going to be able to make that burden. And I have some of the audio of some of this, and here I'm just gonna let's see.
I just want to, before we lose track of what Justice Sotomayor is talking about, one can ask whether the habitual drunkard statutes are sufficiently, the how and why is sufficiently analogous. One could also ask, though, more basically, whether this defendant would qualify as a habitual user. Mm-hmm. And I want to explore that before we lose track of it. Habitual drunkard, the American Temperance Society back in the day said 8 shots of whiskey a day only made you an occasional drunkard. We have to remember the founding era, if you want to invoke the founding era. To be a habitual drunkard, you had to do double that, okay? John Adams took a tankard of hard cider with his breakfast every day. James Madison reportedly drank a pint of whiskey every day. Thomas Jefferson said he wasn't much of a user of alcohol. He only had 3 or 4 glasses of wine a night. Okay? Are they all habitual drunkards who would be properly disarmed for life under your theory?
No, and again, I think this is something...
Okay, if they're not, then what do we know about Mr. Hamani? We know he uses marijuana a few times, about every other day. That's all we have in the record, right?
That's all we have, and I'm
Okay,
not troubled.
so we don't even know the quantity of how much he uses every other day. What if he took 1 gummy bear with a medical prescription in Colorado? Well, you may not even need a medical prescription. You don't even need that anymore. But let's say he had one to help him sleep every other day. Disarm him for life?
No, it's not disarm for life, and here's what's going on.
Potentially. Would that be enough under your theory? 1 gummy bear every other night with a medical prescription.
So I think you'd have a potential rehave problem, but I will accept the hypothetical. So let me just deal with
I think
what's
the answer is yes, under the government's theory.
Yes, under our theory, but let me give you an explanation.
We don't even need to hear the explanation. She just said,
no.
Yeah.
That was comical as hell, because it's like, okay, what's our metric here?
Yeah.
Okay. Because if you go back, people agree,
Mm-hmm.
hey, if you're a habitual drunkard, go in the front of the magistrate, you're dangerous.
Yep.
That was dangerous. But then Okay, she didn't have an answer, or she had an answer, but it was bullshit about how you make someone who takes a gummy every other day categorically dangerous, like habitual drunkards. She couldn't connect the dots. Okay. And as I'm listening to these judges, they're doing what I was trained to do when I cross-examine somebody or take their deposition or something like that. Explain to me what your point is. Okay, please clarify what you're doing. All right. Are there assumptions here that you're using that I'm going to ask you to, stand by your assumptions? Let's agree what they are, stand by them. And then what are the boundaries here? And when he asked her, okay, you're assuming that someone who takes this drug is ergo dangerous. Okay. And he points out that, hey, Thomas Jefferson, that paragon of virtue, only had 3 or 4 glasses of wine a night. Like, where are you going with this? And I can tell you, I have been in situations where my client's position was not particularly good. And I was asked to go in and tap dance. As I'm listening to this, I can see that girl's tap dancing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was Neil Gorsuch, okay? And
that was Gorsuch. Yeah, that was Gorsuch.
On the conservative side, he's like, I ain't buying this shit for a second, okay? And he broke her down.
Yep.
As we're trained to. And then he said, where are the boundaries of this? And there were basically no boundaries. If you're an illegal user of drug, it's a categorical exclusion. And he's going, hang on for a second. We made you go back to 1791. What were they taking your guns away for then if we proved you were dangerous? Okay? And so she could not connect the dots for Gorsuch. Yeah. And for the, even for Barrett, Amy Comey Barrett, she's like, I'm not buying this stuff. You're not telling me these dots are connected because I don't buy it. You're not connecting them in my head. I think the government is on a real slippery slope here. I just don't know whether it's going to be a categorical on its face unconstitutional or is an as applied unconstitutional. We'll wait to see that.
So
because,
you think
at some point,
I was going to say you
may
think
have to argue that.
Oh, please go ahead, Dale. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
They may have to argue that drugs like, if you're an habitual user of fentanyl, okay, but then you fit into the addiction category. So I can see the illegal user of drugs, they just, let's take the eraser and take that out.
So you think it'll be...
An addict, you can easily prove they're dangerous.
You think it'll be a 7-2 decision?
I wouldn't be surprised. Clarence Thomas didn't say much, and he really doesn't usually say a lot.
He doesn't need to.
I think that he's not going to keep buying that all these drugs, are hysterically driven, hair on fire, the Kevin Sabets of the world out there, because I just don't think he buys it. Now, I don't know whether he smoked weed in his whole life or not. I don't know, and I really don't care. But he's poked a lot of holes in the government story about weed multiple times. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's in line, maybe a separate decision. He agrees on some stuff, dissents and stuff. This is where reading the tea leaves is. Yeah. I mean, see, I'd like to get a win out of this. I don't know what it's going to look like.
I think you think it'll be a 7-2. I think it'll be an 8-1. I think it'll be an 8-1. I think Kavanaugh is going to come around on our side on this. But I think we are going to win. But at the same time, I don't want to overhype it up. And I saw a bunch of publications putting out opinions about saying how they think that that there's no way that this and that. But and I'm going to just caution everybody to be putting content out there like that is presumptive in that. Because we want to wait until we have a decision, and we don't want things to get manipulated or turned out of things, because people still talk to these judges and whatnot and could have a possible influence in their decision making process, and so we don't want to over celebrate until we're actually in the final lap.
Well, and I would also tell people out there and the attorneys listening, and I think they understand this, that in 22 the Supreme Court said, here's a new standard. Okay. It's like, holy shit, now we're going to have to go litigate what are the boundaries of this standard, the metrics of it, because that's what attorneys need. If the court says you got to go back to 1791 and establish an analog, they call it, Okay, well, an analog is vague and ambiguous. It's a chemical term. It's a similar drug. I mean, you know this.
Yep.
Delta 8 and Delta 9 and THC, those are analogs of THC. They're similar enough that they have the same effect on the brain. That's a chemical term. Now you're going to take a chemical term and apply it to political lines that were drawn. Now we have to establish what are the metrics. So I need to prepare a jury instruction to give to a jury. What's that going to look like? Because I'll be in front of the judge arguing, this is my interpretation of the Bruin case or whatever this case, the Himani case, whatever you get. The other side's going to have theirs. The judge will decide on a jury instruction, and then that'll go up the chain of command to the appellate court and the Supreme Court to say, okay, we agree with your jury instruction for this reasons, or we disagree for these reasons. These are where attorneys spend too much of their damn time, but we have to have these rules because that's what courts require. It's still in flux right now, and I'd like a win for, a lot of my friends are veterans, and they use weed, and they own guns, and they're reluctant to go public. I'd like to see a clear statement that being an illegal user of drugs is taken out of this. You're going to have to prove that you're dangerous in an analog to an addict. Okay? And I could work with that. I think that would be a major victory for us. Again, if I'm telling you I read the tea leaves, there's going to be a Cassandra effect because no one will believe me until they issue their opinion. I'd caution people not to go too far out there. But there's all these people who think they know what they're talking about, Jason.
Yep.
And they get clicks and likes and all that kind of shit. Yep. They want attention and
they all want attention. That's for sure. That is for damn sure. And on that, we are going to roll into our next commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Rescheduling cannabis, which was classified as more dangerous than fentanyl. Trump's action will destroy the cartel's illicit black market, expand medical research, and ensure seniors and veterans safely receive the care they need. Thank President Trump for delivering on another America First promise.
Calendar.
It's all good.
I don't play anything.
All right. Stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it. And YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. And please make sure that you are subscribing to us on X and Rumble, as those are the most two stable platforms on the metaverse. And we do have a call for action Sunday, March 15th at 2 p.m. The time has changed to 2 p.m. outside of outside of the Chinese Man's Theater on Hollywood Boulevard. Catalyst is having a protest to protest these pedophiles out there in Hollywood and throughout the rest of the world. So please join us on Sunday, March 15th, 2 p.m. outside of Man's Chinese Theater in Hollywood Boulevard.
Under President Trump, America is back. Trump's delivered the largest tax cut in history, putting more money in our pockets and restored America's economic dominance. Promises made, promises kept. Now it's time to fulfill another promise from President Trump and reschedule cannabis, which supports over 400,000 jobs and creates billions of dollars in economic growth. Reschedule cannabis and stack another win, Mr. President. America First Agriculture Action, Inc. is responsible for the contents of this advertising.
And on that, we are back, Dale. And I guess Jenny Beth is not going to be joining us today, unfortunately. Not sure what she has going on, but she said she was going to join us. But nonetheless, I'm going to end up having to read her story here for her. Should I do it in a girl's voice, Dale?
Please don't. Please don't. Southern accent. I'm from Georgia. She's a Georgia girl.
Well, Jenny Beth is telling, and this shout out to Green State. This is out of Green State. More states push to let terminally ill patients use cannabis in hospitals. That's right. For years, medical cannabis in the U.S. has existed, and in this odd legal in between. In many states, patients can get a medical marijuana recommendation for debilitating pain, nausea, muscle spasms, or even terminal illness. Yet medical cannabis in hospitals is pretty much explicitly prohibited. In 2026, that contradiction is finally meeting its moment. Across multiple state legislatures, lawmakers are now advancing bills to let seriously ill patients use medical cannabis inside hospitals, hospice centers, and other care facilities. In the current session, proposals in Connecticut, Hawaii, Oregon, Virginia, and Washington state have moved forward, as one similar bill stalled in Mississippi this week. At the heart of the push is a moral question that many find hard to dismiss. If a qualifying patient is legally using cannabis to manage pain, nausea, anxiety, or other symptoms at home, why should that care stop the moment they enter a hospital or hospice? Advocates have framed it less as a legal loophole and more as a gap in dignity and continuality of care, one that these bills aim to close. The specifics vary by state, but there are clear patterns, including bans on smokable products and secure storage. In Connecticut, lawmakers debated a bill that would require hospitals and certain long-term care facilities to allow terminally ill patients to use non-smokable medical cannabis, such as tinctures, edibles, topicals, while admitted, and supporters argue that forcing patients to abandon an effective treatment simply because they're in a care setting makes little sense, and opponents worry about conflicting federal laws and regulatory oversight. In Hawaii, a companion pair of bills has advanced that would let qualifying patients, including those over 65 with chronic conditions, use medical cannabis in residential health facilities that resemble more home-like care settings, and smoking and vaping would remain prohibited, and the bill includes provisions to protect facilities in federal enforcement guidance were to change, if federal enforcement guidance were to change. Oregon's proposal takes a slightly different approach, focusing on hospices, palliative and home care organizations, and advocates there emphasize cannabis as an alternative or adjacent to opioids in end-of-life care, a way to help patients stay present and comfortable without heavy sedation. Virginia is moving toward a compromise that would explicitly add hospitals to protections already on the books for hospices and nursing homes, and create a working group under the state health department to figure out how implementation would work in practice. And in Washington state, a Senate committee took up a bill that would require healthcare facilities, including hospitals, nursing homes, and hospices, to permit terminally ill patients to use medical cannabis on site starting in 2027, with rules around secure storage, no smoking or vaping, and documented authorization. And finally, in Mississippi, lawmakers are advancing broader changes to the state's medical cannabis program, including expanding eligibility for certain patients, while also debating a version of Ryan's Law that would allow terminally ill patients to use non-smokable cannabis in hospitals and hospice settings. The House has moved the measure forward, but the Senate has taken a narrower approach, trimming or reshaping access in committee, you guys. And there's a why this matters, but I think we all know why this matters, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this, Dale. I'm for all of these bills. I want all of these people that are experiencing their end of days to be in as much comfort as humanly possible, and if cannabis brings that to them, then weed for the people and more power to them. What do you have to say, Dale?
Well, as I told you before, I actually have taken care of hospice patients.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been talking to families, the patients themselves. We used to take them out in the parking lot and have them smoke a joint.
Mm-hmm.
This is back in the 70s when I was in the military, because, you know, there were a few tight-ass officers and high-ranking listed people who didn't understand this. But anybody close to the patient knew that whatever we need to do to make these people comfortable, even if we've got to stretch the rules a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But if we move forward now, the concern is with what we call a DEA registration. If you're a doctor or you're a pharmacist, the DEA can threaten your ability to prescribe and dispense controlled substances if they choose to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The federal government can choose to withhold money if you do things that they consider in violation of federal law. The old Rohrabacher-Farr amendment that you tell me now is continuing law.
Yep.
Helps with it, because this is the DOJ, and they're specifically told you can't spend money if this is state legal cannabis activity.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, is a saving grace. but it doesn't affect the federal government deciding, hey, we're not going to fund you certain programs or withhold federal funds to your institution if you do this. I would hope the Trump administration wouldn't do that. But as I heard yesterday from Sarah Harris, DOJ attorney in the Supreme Court, I don't know. There's people inside there that are listening to Kevin Sabet. But this is going to ruin Western civilization if you allow some guy about to die to take a fucking gummy.
Well, this is the thing, though, Dale. I think she's obligated to make that argument. I don't think she gets to insert her own personal opinion and whatnot. And I'm not saying that is her opinion the other way either. But I think she has a legal obligation as being the counsel to argue on behalf of the government, and that is currently the government's policy.
Well, and I get that. And I told you before, I've been sent in to argue something in court that my client said, this is the position, this is my story, I'm sticking to it. And, I go and do what I'm supposed to do. I get my ass kicked. I go back and say, okay, this is your story. You stick to it, but I'm done being your lawyer. Okay. But there's forces inside the government that put together her position. They put it in writing, they send her up there. You're going to have to go up there and argue this. And it's those people that I would really like to have a minute to ask them, okay, what are your assumptions here? Okay. And that's the Socratic method. You're basing this on Kevin Sabet's telling you your ear something, and a shitload of specialists in this and experienced people are telling you something different in your other ear. Who are you listening to? I think that really is where we need to get the questions to focus. Are you telling me that marijuana is so dangerous and addictive that we cannot let people use it, or if we're going to, it's got to be so carefully controlled? Okay. And the answer is you can't support that assumption, even if Kevin Sabet tells you that my emotional truth here is this is going to ruin Western civilization. Well, let's break it down with some facts, and their story falls apart. I'd love to have those kinds of discussions and arguments with people who are telling me this is so dangerous we can't let people use it.
Yeah.
When you and I know we can find all sorts of experts and people who use it. And it's like, we don't buy this. We have so much factual evidence, but as I've told you before, humans love comfortable stories. And when they get a comfortable story, they make up their own truths about it. And trying to get people to let go of their emotional truth is like pulling an eye tooth. They just don't want to do it. I think that's what we got here. We are ready to back up our truths with facts. Their emotional truths they put out there, when you start throwing facts at them, they crumble. If you have an outside observer, it's going to make the decision. I'd love to have those kind of discussions with these policymakers, and explain it to me like I'm in the 5th grade, okay? Because when you do that, you can't. It falls apart.
I'm with you, Dale. Shout out to all of these states moving in this direction. I'm really happy and excited to see a number of states doing this in a motion forward, and I think more states need to enact this as well. And this is great news, and I hope all of these initiatives get pushed through and over the hump, so to say, especially since it's Hump Day today. And on that, we're going to roll into our final commercial, and we're going to be right back.
I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. That. So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
Ah, yes, and we are back. And Dale, you're going to love this because LA cannabis businesses owe $400 million. And the city may only get $30 million. That's right. Los Angeles cannabis businesses that owe back taxes wouldn't have to pay late fees and interest under an amnesty program proposed by the city council. To qualify, The businesses would have to pay their city taxes within 3 years. The council's unanimous vote on Tuesday asking the Office of Finance to draft language creating the program comes at a time when city leaders are searching for money to cover basic services after closing a $1 billion budget gap. That's a big gap. More than 500 of the roughly 700 licensed cannabis businesses in the city collectively owed about $400 million in taxes, an amount that included $100 million in penalties and $35 million in interest. Wow. According to an October report from the Office of Finance. The total amount owed increased to $417 million as of December, according to Matthew Crawford, the office's assistant director, but only about $150 million is collectible, since some tax debts are outside of the 3-year statute of limitations and some cannabis businesses are no longer even operating. Based on a projection that about half of eligible cannabis businesses would take part in the program, the city would collect about $30 million in back taxes while waiving about $25 million in penalties, the October report said. Under the amnesty program, about 20% of the revenue would go to the city's general fund, and the Office of Finance and the Los Angeles Police Department and the city attorney's office would receive about 40% for illegal cannabis enforcement, and the remaining 40% would fund social equity grants to cannabis operators, particularly members of low-income and minority communities that have been subject to desperate enforcement of criminal cannabis laws. In a quote, "The city finds itself with a unique opportunity to bring businesses into compliance and at the same time properly fund cannabis industry-centric programming." Fund industry cannabis-centric programming. Oh boy, sounds like a grift to me. But council member Amelia Padilla said during Tuesday's meeting that owners of cannabis businesses say the 10% tax rate on their gross sales is exorbitant, and at the same time that illegal cannabis businesses have carved out a chunk of the market. "Not only are we competing against the illicit market, we're competing against licensed dispensaries that the city is allowing to stay open. We have made it their business model to not pay tax." Daniel Sosa, who owns 4 cannabis dispensaries in the city, told the council on Tuesday. The amnesty program should be mandatory for businesses that are behind on their taxes, and those who default on their payments should have their licenses stripped, Sosa said. Interesting perspective, Daniel. Daniel also said that the tax on cannabis sales should be just like every other business pays in the city. Guns, tobacco, alcohol, major billion-dollar corporations. Other businesses' tax rates in the city range from 0.11% to 0.425%, according to Crawford. And last month, the council placed a cannabis-related measure on the June 2nd ballot that, if approved by voters, would close a tax loophole for illegal cannabis businesses and open them up to threat of civil collection. Well, I think that's probably the only chance that they have of closing down these illegal shops, is being able to put some type of tax levy onto them. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this.
Well, as to your last comment, I don't know that I would argue that the city doesn't have the authority to tax an illegal business.
Well,
I mean, and my last trial was against the public entity who went out and took $12 million from growers and then changed their mind and said, too bad, so sad. You have to get a specific grant of authority from the legislature to be able to tax a business. Okay? The general grant of authority is a lawful business. And if you're saying they don't have a license, per se, they're not a lawful business.
Yeah.
So to go tax them, but I think that creates a problem for them.
Well, Dale, I'm going to push back on that, and I'm going to say that they 100% do have the ability to do it, because when the State Board of Equalization first came after us saying that we had to start charging sales tax for cannabis, none of us had a license back then, and so therefore we weren't viewed as legal businesses. We were simply tolerated by different municipalities and whatnot. But yet the state of California said that you have to start paying sales tax, and not only just sales tax now, now, but from the date of inception for which you were started. So I think that they do have a legal standing and a case precedent to be able to charge to implement tax levies on this business. Now, who ultimately receives that tax levy and how they're going to determine that's going to be interesting. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, I think that's kind of what will happen.
But just because they have the power to do it doesn't mean they have the right to do it. And see, that's where attorneys go in and have a pissing match in court.
Yeah, but Dale,
because back in the Jason, back in the day, in the 420 day, it was hard to argue this wasn't a quasi-legal business, and so the courts allowed taxes and stuff to be imposed upon them.
I'm not sure. I would buy that argument personally, Dale. I'm not sure that I'm buying that argument. I think that they already have a case precedent to do so, and they have every way to be able to enact that. And the reality of it is that in tax court, you're guilty until you're proven innocent. So it's going to be on them to prove that they're not subject to that, and that's a tough burden to lift.
Well, but tax court's not the end of it. You can get into a real court, okay, if you challenge this.
Mm-hmm.
And my last trial was in a real court,
mm-hmm.
okay? All this other, stuff really didn't matter because we applied the basic rules, and if the legislature doesn't authorize you to do it, then you don't have the legal authority to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was a lot of, it happened a lot. I mean, Humboldt County put taxes on the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it also depends on what kind of a tax it is. If it's a tax on the sale of personal property that's equal across the board for all tangible personal property, that's a harder argument to make. But if it's a specific excise tax, that's a different argument.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I guess that, I don't want to get into too many tangents here because that's not the heart of this story here, is that the government taxes and regulates this industry at local, state, and federal level. And the feds, we have nothing to say about it. At the local and state level, my position is I don't think the local should be able to impose an excise tax on this, period. And they shouldn't be able to regulate it, period. That should be the state's job. Treat it like alcohol and bring it down from 15% to, say, 3% for concentrates, 1% for flour, more comparable.
No,
that one, I would argue, that's where we need to be taking this and get the locals out of it. The city of Los Angeles is just, they're bloodsuckers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they take money and spend it on stupid shit. That is just so easy to show. And for our industry, and the old, the picture of that cash cow, we're about dead.
Mm-hmm.
And they still want to suck more out of us.
Mm-hmm.
They are really a bad example of why this needs to be taken out of the local control and be treated like alcohol to state level. You can zone it, blah, 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 but you can't do all this other crap because we end up where we are here. And then you can't collect.
Yep.
And that's the reality. Because if you set up what we call an asset protection business, an LLC or a C Corp, and they don't have any money, and the shareholders and members, you go, okay, well, I ain't got any money. You can go sue the LLC for these tax dollars and good luck.
Yep.
Because the bank is empty.
Yep.
Okay? That's why I set these things up. And we still do that because these are bloodsuckers.
Yep.
And if you can't afford it, you run out of money.
Yep.
You got to go to receivership, let the tax people come get some money there.
Yep.
Because if there's no money in the till, they're not showing up your business to empty your cash register if you close the business.
Yep.
Now what do? They're
Exactly.
going to take your product there because it's gone.
Exactly.
An empty building. Good luck with you.
Time to head for the hills, Dale. Time to head for the hills on that.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
The tax people, they're thieves.
They are.
And I'm willing to give them a certain amount. We have to pay taxes to make the machine work. But when you throw money at them like we've been doing here, and you see they're just shoveling money out to people with results that you wonder, I really didn't want my tax dollars to do that. Okay? That's my fundamental position.
Yep.
And we have battled in California to stop the local jurisdictions from taking every nickel they can from you. And we may have to continue these fights because it's all about money. Government doesn't make money from selling a widget.
Exactly.
It gets money from picking your pocket for taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's how it makes money. And the business model is not applicable because you don't have to satisfy the customer.
Mm-hmm.
We're the customer.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to satisfy us. But if it's a business and you make a widget and I don't buy your widgets, you go out of business.
Yep.
But we don't have any choice. They take our money and they're not accountable to us. Where do we go with this?
Yep. I'm with you, Dale. I'm with you. Well, I have one final story for us today, Dale. I think we're going to end on a happy note. All right. Maryland's full Senate advances a bill protecting fire and rescue workers who use medical cannabis. That's right. Legislation in Maryland that would protect fire and rescue personnel from workplace penalties over lawful medical marijuana use has been given approval by the state's full Senate. Senate Bill 439 was approved by the full Maryland Senate today on second reading, placing the proposal one step away from final passage in the chamber. A third and final reading vote is expected soon, and filed by State Senator Carl Jackson, a Democrat, the legislation would prohibit employers from disciplining, terminating, or otherwise discriminating against fire and rescue public safety employees solely because they possess a valid written certification for medical cannabis or test positive for cannabis components or metabolites while holding that certification. The bill applies to firefighters, emergency medical technicians, cardiac rescue technicians, and paramedics employed by municipal governments, counties, the state, and the state airport authority or a fire control district. Under the proposal, employers would also be barred from limiting, segregating, or classifying employees in a way that reduces employment opportunities due to lawful medical cannabis use outside of work. The bill also states that it does not require employers to violate federal law or risk losing federal funding or licensing related benefits. If the Senate gives final approval on the third reading, it will move forward to the House for consideration. You guys, look at that. Shout out to all of our emergency responders, our firemen and ambulance drivers, and you know what I mean. I love these guys. They always do such a great job and coming in at clutch for people, and I think that they deserve this. What do you have to say, Dale?
Oh, absolutely. And what I was thinking was the argument that Amy Comey Barrett got into with Sarah Harris on Monday. It's like, so if my husband has an Ambien prescription and I sneak in and grab one, does that make me dangerous?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And if you're talking about here where, what are the assumptions here? If somebody's using marijuana, what are we assuming is wrong with that picture? Okay. And that's where this starts to crumble. And I started thinking about Amy Comey Barrett.
Yep.
So if I go to the doctor and get a prescription for Ambien, okay, and I take it lawfully, it's in my system, okay, does that make me dangerous any more than if I take my husband's Ambien or my wife's Ambien or whatever, does that make me dangerous? And if I've got weed in my system, I'm not under the influence while I'm there, it's around for 30 days, we can't fix this. And my doctor says you need this because these are stressful jobs, heart problems are serious, and I can't sleep, so I take a gummy to sleep. Not when I'm on a job. Does that prevent me from showing up and dragging your ass out of a fire? I mean, what are we really talking about here? That's where you attack the assumptions. And when I was listening to this, you know, I'm thinking, Amy Comey, you got it right there.
Yep.
If my husband can get this Ambien and he's not dangerous, but if I sneak it from him, now I'm dangerous. Okay.
That's
where are we going with that? Yeah, buddy, but she didn't have an answer. And because you attack the assumptions, and that's where they fall apart. Are you telling me because a cop or a firefighter smokes a joint on a Saturday night at a party and he doesn't show up for work until Monday, all of a sudden he can't be a cop to be trusted as a cop or a firefighter because we can find a system? Explain that to me like I'm in the 5th grade. Yeah. And they can't. Yep. And that's why when I was listening to this thing, it's like almost 2 hours long and you get really bored. And all of a sudden, you know, the ayahuasca, you know, story, and then Amy Comey Barrett going, and they all understand these old assumptions about drugs just don't work anymore. Yep. You know, don't tell me you believe it's dangerous prove to me why it is, and they can't.
Yep. Exactly
That's
right.
my response to all this stuff.
Exactly right. And if anyone wants to hear the full audio of a lot of that discussion, that Ambien comment is in a video on our Instagram page. So you can head over there and you can listen to everything that I played here today, as well as this whole Ambien discussion. And I'm with you, Dale. When she said when they asked, if someone taking their husband's or their wife's Ambien pill that's not prescribed to them, would they fall under the law of having their firearms licenses revoked? She said yes. She said, yes, that would classify as that. She said, but we have no enforcement mechanism on that. But she said that and it's just the logic there is just, yeah.
Well, but what we've seen internally is the Biden administration said, hey, we don't want you going after people with a gun and smoking weed. Don't do it criminally. So they backed off. Okay. But non-enforcement doesn't actually clarify the law.
Yep.
Okay. We're not going to enforce because it makes us look stupid. Well, change the law so you don't look stupid legally.
Yep.
And they don't want to do that. And the other problem here, I remember I used to represent a lot of cops. Okay. And in 1986, Molly and I and another physician, we examined every cop in Sacramento, every sheriff. That was a wink, wink, nod, nod, the green flu. Okay. We gave them an excuse to go off work for 3 days. The whole county shut down. And they got a great labor contract. And we were their heroes. But we also found out that SWAT guys were sucking on their shotguns at night, thinking about blowing their head off. But you could not go see a psychiatrist or take a psychotropic drug to help deal with that depression because it was not socially acceptable in law enforcement. I would like to see that change. And cannabis is helpful because a lot of these guys had PTSD and they were going to work every day with PTSD. And we know from our veterans now that if you have trouble smoking and you take cannabis at night, it helps you sleep. It helps work with your counselor, work on why are you so triggered with PTSD. Inside these communities, they still do not like that. Oh, go drink. That's great. But drinking with, I'm going to tell you what Todd McAree has told me, that if you drink alcohol with PTSD, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. Okay? Smoking weed with PTSD is like taking a fire extinguisher. Okay? That's the metaphor I want people to think about. It doesn't make you dangerous. It doesn't mean you can't climb a ladder and stick a hose in there and put a fire out. Stop it. Okay? These are tough jobs. And it twists people's heads up. They have heart attacks early because it's so stressful. And if you can't prove that it causes a problem for them doing their jobs, then get out of the room. Shut up. You don't care about these people. You've got some emotional truth in your head that you refuse to give up, and you're going to impose it on people who could really benefit from smoking a joint and chilling. Okay?
Fair enough. And on that, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. And big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Catalyst Cannabis for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. And thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. Thank you to Cloud Media Partners Elias and Gabriel. They're somewhere in the metaverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.